My name is Rob Jekielek. I'm a managing director here at the Harris Poll in New York City. So hello from New York City to all of you in Athens. So today I'll talk a little bit about U.S. Industry, pharma industry reputation. I'm going to focus a little bit deeper in the U.S., but also give you some highlights of some of the things we're seeing globally, and a little bit of a preview for what's to come. We've been doing an annual survey on industry reputation for the last few years, so we'll highlight some of the U.S. changes. Most of the global work will be coming soon. So first and foremost, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction, one slide, less than a minute on the Harris Poll. Some of you may know us well. Some of you in the room, I think right now maybe in the middle of pharma reputation projects with our team. But the three core things, we do a lot of global market research. The three things we are known for, the first and foremost is corporate reputation. So again, it's a privilege to be here to talk to you about that topic. In that space, we have over 30 years of deep healthcare expertise. For the last 25 years, we've been running a study called the Reputation Quotient. We currently in the US release that with Axios. So it's the Axios Harris Poll 100. I will show you some pharma highlights from that study. The second thing we are distinctively known for is our work around brand equity and conversion. In that work, we actually run quite a few SaaS products where we're tracking over 1,700 brands across 14 global markets that are always on. And the third thing that you may know us for is data-driven thought leadership. We also have a deep digital portfolio where our main emphasis is on search. So again, just a really quick introduction to us at the Harris Poll, with our emphasis today being very much around reputation. One of the things that makes our work very unique is that we're always providing it in context of what's happening in any one market. So as we're looking at the United States today, this is a snapshot of into the minds of Americans. So for the last several years, we've been running a monthly study with American voters. We do that in partnership with Harvard. It's called the Harvard Harris Poll. It gets released every month in a political publication called The Hill. So a few kind of important data points. Many of you, hopefully the slide is big enough so many of you in the room can read it. But you can see there is a lot of different issues that are very top of mind for Americans today. First and foremost, it's very much still around inflation and the economy. One of the issues that has been most certainly growing over time in the US is also immigration. Those are the three things that really take up the headspace of Americans today. As we're getting into kind of the pharma space, if you will, healthcare is quite top of mind, and the pharma industry on a variety of issues does kind of pop in and out. Healthcare is within that kind of top tier, not as high as the economy and inflation, but a serious area of interest and in many cases concern in the US. One of the very important trends to think about as we're looking at pharma reputation, and I take you deeper into that data, is the coronavirus or COVID trend, right? So as we're picturing back to where the COVID trend, it's currently at 5%. So 5% of Americans right now would say that it's one of the three most important issues facing the country. But again, it's still, as I think many people can picture it, it has some very emotional connotations to it. It's actually very much on par with a variety of other politicized and emotional issues, whether it's January 6th or looking at the weaponization of the Justice Department, and just behind the Israeli-Hamas conflict, which again, in the minds of Americans is something that you see on TV, but it's maybe not seen in the US as much of an existential threat or as big a crisis as it may be in some other markets for good reason. So as you're looking at that COVID trend, if we take ourselves back to where we were in 2020, 63% of Americans would have said that it's one of the top three most important issues, right? And it's during this period of 2020, 2021, where pharma companies in the US really had a reputational breakthrough, which I'll show you data on. So again, as you're looking at the data, you can picture 63 and 55 being twice as big as what inflation and the economy look like today. So kind of taking us back to that moment or that period of deep crisis and emotive context. So as we're looking at pharma reputation, I'm going to take you into a longitudinal perspective. So it's probably the numbers across the bottom may be too small for you to read, but this is a timeline that goes back to 2007 when we're looking at industry reputation in the US. We've highlighted the pharma reputation line in green on this slide. So what you're seeing is that over time, pharma reputation has been quite middling, right? So generally speaking, about 30% of Americans would have given pharma a positive reputation pre-COVID. During COVID, and that 32% you can see is from the beginning of 2020, just as kind of the first question marks around the pandemic were starting to emerge. It really wasn't a full-blown pandemic yet. So from that 32%, what you can see from 2020 to 2021, as the development of COVID vaccines was in full force, and in 2021, early 2021, you're starting to see those actually hit the market. That was a remarkable run for pharma reputation, and literally a doubling of positive reputation from 32 to 62. Where we are today is well above that 32, but no longer at that 62, right? Almost exactly in the middle, in around that kind of mid 40s range. So when you're looking at that decline, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit more detail, I'll show you some examples. What you're really seeing is kind of an increase, not in the same kind of maybe negativity and skepticism that you would have seen at 32, but certainly more less positivity than you were seeing at peak 2021. And this also aligns with some of the bigger trends that we see across industry reputation, which are just increases in kind of politicization. So under the hood, if you're looking at these data points, you can start seeing that from 2020 to present, you're seeing a much bigger split in America between Republicans and Democrats, or more conservative versus more liberal Americans. What's also quite noteworthy is there is a peak here in the middle. So this is for the 45% is 2022. The 46% is where we are today. Right between those, you can actually see that there's a blip up. This was an interesting period of time because in the U.S. there was a mini financial crisis. There were a couple smaller regional banks, one of them very tech heavy in Silicon Valley, called Silicon Valley Bank, that went under. Also at that exact same time, you had insulin price reductions. There's a number of high-profile pharma companies that announced insulin price reductions, and that actually saw a unique spike in reputation, or bump in reputation. So although that has faded, you can see that there's a lot of industry moves that have happened, both in terms of innovation as well as on issues like pricing, can certainly move the needle on pharma reputation. So that gives you a little bit of the broader context. I'm going to highlight for you a couple company examples just to make the point a little bit more direct. So one of the studies that I alluded to, we've been running it for 25 years now. It's based off of the Harris Poll Reputation Quotient, or RQ framework. For the last 5 years, we've been releasing it in the US with Axios, which is a publication that probably some of you know well and are subscribed to the newsletters, even if you're global. Others, it's a very unique kind of purview into kind of what's happening in the US. It's a very kind of modern, tech-forward news organization that's known for what they call smart brevity. So if you're interested in finding out what's happening in the US and you want to get there fast, a publication like Axios is a fantastic one. So they've been a great partner with us for the last 5 years. And what we do in this study, again, the Axios Harris Poll 100, is we look at reputation through the lens of the most visible companies in America. So we don't actually select the companies. The US public nominates the companies based on top of mind visibility. That's the first phase of the research. So out of that first phase, we get 100 companies. And again, the key thing here, we'll be highlighting for you some of the companies in pharma that have been on that list. And then the second part of the study is using the RQ framework to then create a score based on those 100 most visible companies. So you can think of the RQ framework here as very much a shorthand for looking at reputation across every sector. right? So it's not specifically built for, in this work, it's not specifically built for pharma, but it has the fundamentals of what you'd want to look at in pharma, and then also customize off of, right? As you can imagine, most of our work in pharma reputation is highly tailored to specific markets, specific attributes, specific therapeutic areas, and very much aligned with the kind of communication channels that can be used in those markets. The US is quite unique in terms of your ability to directly market to consumers. Most other markets don't have that, but there are a variety of other channels and mechanisms for pharma companies to engage. But so looking at the RQ framework, our shorthand based to kind of give you an insight into the companies I'm going to show you on the next slide. On the right-hand side, what you have are the more traditional fundamental elements of reputation. It's very much around vision for the company, growth prospects of the company, and its products and services, both in terms of quality as well as innovativeness. In the middle, you have trust, which is kind of that, again, core fundamental of reputation. It's that thing that is critically important, sometimes hard to touch, but really essential in terms of understanding what's driving reputation. And then on the left-hand side, we have corporate character, right? This is very much kind of the emerging, more modern perspective on reputation. You can't have a reputation without the blue, without the fundamentals. But in order to have a really standout reputation, you need to be able to have a provocative and compelling perspective on your company's culture, on its ethics, as well as its citizenship. Probably one of the most unique aspects of citizenship, this is a driver that has come into the framework over the last 5 years, is this idea of shares my values, right? And some of you may be asking, well, in citizenship, why isn't there an environmental attribute? The answer is we look at environmental issues very, very deeply, but as you go across sectors, environment is not a key driver for all sectors. So this is a really great shorthand for looking at reputation across sectors. With that, kind of one of the takeaways is this idea of shares my values is a really essential one. And shares my values is not about kind of politicized joining into the latest social issue or most politicized issue. It's very much understanding what moves at a values level all of your key stakeholders, which is going to be very different if you're talking about nurses versus primary care physicians versus nephrologists or cardiologists versus employees or investors. Okay. So as we look at the RQ framework, one of the key things, and I'll just highlight this very quickly, is as you look at reputation and its long-term impact, there are very, very strong financial impact results, even as you're looking at consumer research. So this comes from the Axios Harris Poll 100. If you look at the companies which have strong reputations, 70 or higher on a 100-point scale, they disproportionately outperform a variety of stock indices. So strong reputation companies outperform the NASDAQ, which is where, again, a lot of tech companies sit, by 1.5 times, the S&P 500 by 2 times, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average by 2.5 times, right? Again, reinforcing the financial value and impact of reputation. So when we look deeper into, well, who are the companies that are standing out on reputation? This is your snapshot of what's happening in America, okay? So as you look at this is a bell curve. It is not your top 100 companies. Again, people have nominated companies in on reputation, both for good or as well as more challenging reasons. If you look at the very top on the left-hand side, you see companies like Patagonia, John Deere, Toyota, Samsung, Amazon, Apple, 3M, right? Those are standout players on reputation, absolutely outstanding. On the bottom right, these are companies that were nominated for more challenging reasons. You have BP, you have Bitcoin, you have ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, you have Meta or Facebook, you have Twitter, you have the Trump Organization. So in terms of pharma companies, there's 2 that were in this year's most visible companies, right? These are very much the bellwethers for reputation in the US. They are Pfizer at 75.6 out of 100, which is a very good score and in 50th position. And then you also have Johnson & Johnson, who today is at a 70.9. Historically in the US, I'll show you a bit of a trend line. This is Johnson & Johnson is one of the top 5, top 10 reputation companies in the country, but is in a very different position today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. 2 other context points for just thinking about healthcare in America. 2 of the standout healthcare companies are CVS Health, which is both CVS Health and Walgreens are pharmacies plus. So CVS Health is again, this is very unique to the U.S. market. It is a pharmacy plus a pharmacy benefits manager. So it distributes a lot of the drugs, even outside of CVS for many insurance companies. And it also has its own insurance company called Aetna. Walgreens, again, is a large pharmacy-based company, but also is building out a lot more integrated models for looking at healthcare. Both these two companies, Walgreens and CVS, are very much at the kind of front edge of rediscovering or transforming what primary care looks like in America. CVS is the standout in kind of the healthcare space today, right? So a little bit of context. But where has pharma reputation kind of come? So as we're in the back of our mind, as we're seeing that overall spike in 2021, what does that mean for individual brands or companies? So this is a good snapshot, or the tale of two reputations. We could actually take this further back in time. But as you look at the red line, this is Johnson & Johnson. If we go further back in time, that brand and company is well into the 80s, right? A very different reputational position today. A lot of the challenges and issues that it's faced are very well documented, so I don't need to go into them. I mean, now kind of culminating with that company be splitting into two, as I'm sure many people in the room know. It's now Johnson & Johnson is the pharma company, and Kenvue is the consumer brands company. The one that the brand or the company that's really had the most impact and benefit from kind of what it was able to do during COVID is Pfizer. You can see a startling kind of improvement in reputation, moving from the mid-60s to peak at 80.2. That period of 80.2, which was in 2021, was really kind of the pinnacle pharma reputation year. Never had we seen before two more pure play pharma companies in the top 10. That year, 2021, you had Moderna as a number 3. So again, it got nominated in first as one of the most visible companies, which is difficult to do. And then second, it scored exceptionally high at 81.3. That year, Pfizer was 80.2. So again, 2021 was definitely, from a reputation perspective, pinnacle pharma year in the U.S. It's softer now for Pfizer at 75.6, but still well ahead of where it was pre-COVID. Right, which again just reinforces that industry trend line where both the industry can help companies, but individual companies can also help champion overall industry reputation. As you're looking at that decline from 80 to 75.6, behind the scenes, there's also a unique and important split in the U.S. Political split between Republicans and Democrats. Right, Democrats more liberal, more supportive, Republicans more conservative and more skeptical. So I'll drive you to the finish line with two final slides. This is a study that we're right now in the process of updating. We're looking at an industry reputation, and this is kind of a quick snapshot across a number of different global markets. I'll show you what that looks like on the next slide. The key kind of setup for 2023 is where was pharma in 22? So in 22, pharma was steady. This is from late last year. Well behind tech, grocery, retail, but also well ahead of financial services, insurance, and government. The financial insurance services one is particularly interesting. As you look at global markets, financial services receives a lot more skepticism than it does in markets like the US, where it's actually quite strong. So, final slide for our kind of take on global and US pharma reputation is just a snapshot in terms of looking at that 60 score on the slide before and breaking it out across a variety of different markets. The main highlight I'll leave you here with is that, last year we were seeing most companies kind of rebound or strengthen a little bit or stay flat, versus in the US, you saw that steep decline. Right, this is kind of a parallel. This is the U.S. timeline is literally from that long timeline that I showed you a few slides ago. Very parallel to what we're seeing with Pfizer. But again, is that 10-point drop? It was by far the biggest of any market. So I think that's an important context point, and heavily driven by a split in kind of politicization of reputation. Which, if you're working or you have a connection to the U.S. market right now, that is one of the biggest kind of risk trends is politicization of issues, brands, and industries. But from a pharma perspective, that kind of hit from 21 to 22. Now it's very much holding steady, as we talked about, in that range of new normal for the industry, which is well above pre-COVID, but not near where it was during peak reputation. So thank you for the time to speak, and I believe there might be some questions or comments to follow. So I look forward to that.
So thank you very much for your time and to share your findings. I would like to have a clarification. When you say about visible companies, this visible in terms of awareness or good reputation in general?
In awareness. So
In awareness.
we asked people to top of mind, unaided, nominate companies into the study. So top of mind, which companies would you say are most reputationally relevant for either good or for bad reason?
There is a stable relation between awareness and reputation, and sometimes it's for bad reputation. They know the company, but not for the right reasons.
Exactly correct. So if depending on how you're looking at issues, a lot of social media companies right now have very challenging reputations, whether it's Facebook or / Meta or Twitter as examples, right? Or if you're looking at Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light, or Disney as examples, right? Those are companies that have been hit by significant reputational risks.
Okay, can you state that pharma reputation, based on your measurements year by year, will now stabilize at these levels higher than before? If they had gained capital, let's say permanently, or not?
The data would indicate that. That is one of the big ongoing discussions in the U.S. right now in pharma circles. Right, there are some big issues that face the industry around, for example, drug pricing and access. Those are perpetual, but there's a lot more governmental action that's being put forward on drug pricing as an example. So that's kind of an always challenging issue. But right now, the industry is, again, it's not the top industry. It's not like tech or grocery, but it is in a much better position than it has been historically, right? Again, right in the middle of between where it was before, which was low 30s, versus where it was at peak, which is in the 60s. So right in that mid 40s range, and that's a very strong position to be in from a communications or marketing perspective. You would hope that your initiatives, your actions, your products can create a new higher normal versus just creating a single peak that drops off. But that's something we've seen sustained over time, month over month.
Okay, thank you. We have another question.
Yes. Thank you, sir, for a very full of information and insights presentation. I heard kind of an effort to relate awareness to reputation, the previous question. And I was thinking if we can do the same with innovation and reputation. Innovative practices, especially the ones that came after the pandemic, do they look like having any special relation to the reputation as it is developed, especially practices that are being seen right away, because some innovative practices may need some more time to be seen and understood?
It's a great question.
Innovation to reputation in terms of the company's practices related to innovation. Do you have any index in this area?
I think you may have broke up for a second as you were speaking, but just to make sure that I'm tracking, I believe you're asking about the relationship between awareness and reputation, and then also innovation and reputation. Is that accurate?
Especially innovation and reputation, yes. Innovative practices in general, especially the ones that came after the pandemic period.
Yes, it's a great question. So I will hit both those points, but I will focus my attention on innovation and innovative practices. So as you look at awareness and reputation, the first thing I would say is it's most important to focus on who are your key stakeholders right now, right? And do I have awareness with those stakeholders? So for some pharma companies, the public or consumers are actually very important, probably in the US versus other markets more so than others, because you do have additional channels you can use and you have different expectations. But at the same time, if we're looking at companies that have much more focus on, that are more niche or work only in rare disease, maybe your focus shouldn't be on consumers. It should be very much around very specific patient population, specific groups of specialists, maybe caregivers, maybe nurses, et cetera, right? But their awareness is essential. But the key thing is not just having, people know who your brand is. It is very much around salience, right? Do they immediately connect that brand to, in particular, a specific, for example, therapeutic area or area of benefit? Which sets up the second part of your question. The innovative practices piece is one of the most essential components of pharma reputation, right? When we think of that area, especially as we look at a broader audience, patient audiences, it's really about the area of benefit, not just the technology. So as you look at kind of the technology behind things, like a cancer or oncology is a great space to be thinking about as an example. That is one of the areas where we're seeing massive innovation and real breakthroughs in terms of therapies. Most patients, and actually in many decision makers, they don't focus on, for example, immunotherapy. They really focus on what the benefits of that are. But again, we see a huge amount of runway for innovation, and pharma reputation is one of the most essential elements, because there are so many breakthroughs that are currently happening, as well as on the horizon. Again, I picked oncology, but if you looked at diabetes and obesity, there are if you look at nephrology, there are all sorts of spaces where there are true and real breakthroughs that are coming right now, and it's absolutely essential to pharma reputation. I don't think most companies are getting the credit they deserve for that work. Some companies maybe more so than others. Even as I look at for example, Pfizer's reputation in the US as one of the examples, some of the biggest credit points it got, and this is very important for pharma, were around culture, right? Which really reinforces not just kind of like the products you create, but who's creating them, who are the scientists behind the work, who are the leaders behind the work. So in addition to innovation, I would also very much emphasize the role of culture and of people and of the scientists behind your work.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Very good.
Thank you very much, Rob, for your presentation. As a final conclusion, I would like to keep that the stronger the reputation, the higher stock growth. So this is, from my point of view, the final conclusion. If we agree, I would like to thank you again for your participation, and we will keep in touch.
Thank you for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone.